Here are all the answers to practice 2.8. Be aware this is a long video since I'm going through each and every problem. First problem, you have to graph the inequality. Since this is just a linear inequality, I'm going to pick out what's my m here. In this case, it's going to be equal to 1. My b here is equal to 4. This is mx plus b. I know that since there's no line underneath here, this is going to be dotted. And this says that y is less than the equation, so it's going to be shaded below the line. So this is what your graph should look like. Again, if for some reason I cannot tell if the line is dotted or solid, or if I cannot tell where you plot your points, it's very important that you still label this for your problem. This again is a linear inequality, so my m is going to be equal to negative 3. I always like to put that over 1 because your slope is rise over run. My b is equal to a negative 1, and it's going to be a solid line because there's a line underneath my inequality statement, and it's going to be above for the shading because y is greater than. And this is what that should look like. And you should always make sure to first plot this point, and then from this point you use your slope. For this problem, I have to first get my y by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides of the equation. So my new inequality is going to be y is less than 5x plus 2. So my slope here is going to be equal to 5. Again, I always like to write that as a fraction. It helps me when I graph. My y-intercept is 2, positive 2, and it's going to be a dotted line because there is no line underneath my inequality statement. And it says it's less than, so it's going to be below the line. And that is what your graph should look like. Now we are dealing with an absolute value. First thing though, you always want to make sure to get your y all by itself. If I rewrite this, this says y is less than or equal to the absolute value of x plus 2 plus 7. Now I'm going to state my transformation. So this 2 is going to move it left 2 because it's on the inside, so it's opposite. The 7 is going to move it up 7. Since there's no number out in front, that's going to be a slope of 1. So this right here is going to tell me my vertex. Left 2 means a negative 2, up 7 is a positive 7. And when I'm looking at my symbol here, it says that it is going to be solid because there's a line underneath, and y is less than, so that you're going to be shading below the graph. So that's what the graph has looked like, and now if I shade below, look at the lines and actually shade below wherever the graph is. So this is what that inequality would look like. I changed this problem. So again, make sure that you have this as the changed problem. First thing you have to do is subtract 5 on both sides of the equation. So you get y is less than 3 absolute value of x minus 5. So now when I look at this, this is going to have a down 5, and it's also going to have a slope of 3 because there's a vertical stretch. So now my new vertex, 0 because there's nothing on the inside of the function, and down 5 would be a negative 5. So when I graph this, 0, negative 5, and it's going to be dotted because there's no line underneath my absolute value, and it's less than, so it's below. So my slope is 3, so it's a rise of 3, run of 1, rise of 3, run of 1 on each side. I'm going to make it dotted. And below this graph would look like this. So this would be the graph of the inequality equation. Same thing here, you first want to get the y by itself. So I'm going to divide by negative 2 And when you divide by -2, you have to divide each term by -2. One thing you have to be careful about when you're doing inequalities, that's going to flip my sign. My sign now is flipped because I'm dividing by a negative. So negative x divided by -2, that's like a 1/2 x. -2 divided by -2, that's going to give me a positive 1. Now when I'm looking at this is a linear equation. So my m is equal to 1/2 and my b is equal to 1. It's going to be a solid line because there's a line underneath here. And since y is greater than, I'm going to shade above that line. So if I plot my points at a positive 1, rise of 1, run of 2, rise of 1, run of 2, solid line. And when I'm shading, it's going to be above the line. Same thing here, I have to get the y by itself, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides of the equation. That would give me a -2x plus 1 is greater than or equal to y. Now one thing is very difficult is when y is on the right hand of the equation. So I'm going to rewrite this. So it says y is less than or equal to -2x plus 1. And since it's pointing to the y here, you have to make sure when you rewrite it, it's still pointing to the y. So my m is going to be equal to -2, and I'm going to put that over 1 because I like the fraction. My b is 1. It's going to be a solid line, and it's going to be shading below the line. And this is what your graph should look like. So another linear equation, my m is 3/1, my b is -4. It's going to be solid because there's a line here, and it's going to be shading above. So my -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Positive 3/1, rise over run, solid line, and above that, be shading over here. Another absolute value. So this is actually just like my parent function. My parent function starts at 0, 0, and then it's a slope of 1. It's going to be a solid line because it's or equal to. Since it says above, y is greater than this, it's above my function. So it's actually going to be right in between the v. So again, this is your parent function. That's why your vertex is at 0, 0 with a slope of 1. So in this problem, you're moving left 2 because I always opposite on the inside. My slope is 1. So that means my vertex would be at -2, 0 because I didn't move up and down at all. So I plot my vertex, and it's going to be dotted, and my slope is up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And then I'm going to dot the rest of these. And I'm shading above because y is greater than, so above that line would be, again, be right in the middle of the v. So kind of the opposite from the last problem. I'm going to be moving right 2 because on the inside of the equation, it's going to be opposite. It's going to be solid because there's a line here. It's going to be below because the y is being less than the equation. Slope here is 1. When nothing is shown, it's always 1. So my vertex is going to be a positive 2, 0 with the solid line up 1 over 1, just like that. And it's going to be below the function, so below the line. So this plus 2 on the outside of the equation moves it up 2. It's going to be dotted because there's no line. And since y is greater than, it's going to be above. So my vertex would be 0, 2 because it doesn't move left or right at all. And again, since there's no number out in front, my slope is 1. So if I go 0 up 2, it's going to be dotted. So I can make my v and then make the other ones dotted lines. Again, it's always important to make sure that I can see writing it out so that in case if I can't tell on your graph. And above this equation would be right in the middle of the v. Here you have to find out what the equation is given the graph or the inequality. First thing you want to do is find out what the vertex is. In this case, I'm counting by 2's here, so my vertex, it just moved right 3, so it'd be 3 and it didn't move up and down at all, 0. Now I'm going to check to see what is the slope. So from this point, and it looks like this point is also, actually we'll use this point right here since we're counting by 2's. This point would have a rise of 1 and a run of 1, 2, 3. So my slope here would be equal to 1/3. So now when I plug this in, I'm going to leave a space for my y because that's just easier for me. My a is 1/3, and we have my absolute value of x. And that, remember, x is always opposite, so it's going to say -3. Nothing on the outside. Now when I look at this, it's shaded below the line, so it's going to be y is less than, and since it's dotted, I do not want to have a line there, so this would be my answer. This is a linear equation, so I have to figure out what my m is, and I also want to figure out what my b is to help me out. My b here crosses at -2, so I'm going to write that out, -2. Looks like it also crosses here. This time my boxes count by 1, so my rise would be 1, 2. My run would be a -1, 2, 3, because I'm moving backwards. Then my slope would be 2 over -3. So I'm going to again leave a space for my inequality sign, but have my mx plus b written out. And it's shaded above my line, so y would be greater than, and it's dotted, so I'm going to leave it just like that. And that would be my answer. Same thing here, I want to figure out what my m is. I also want to figure out what my b is. My b is a +4 because that's where it crosses the y-axis. And again, these boxes count by 2. So when I do my rise, this would be 2, 4, and my run would be 2. So that would be 4 over 2, which is also equal to 2. So again, I'm going to leave a space for my inequality. So it's going to be my mx plus b. It's shaded below the line, so that means y is less than the equation. And since it's a solid line, I have to make sure to put my or equal to. This problem actually already has the equation out for you. You just have to put the inequality in. So I'm going to leave my space and write out my equation because my b is 5 and my slope is rise of run 2. It's shaded above the line, so y should be greater than the equation. And since it's dotted, there's no line underneath, so that is it. Again, in this problem, it already has the equation out for you. Your vertex is at a -4, -3, and your slope here would be 1. Rise over run would be 1. So now again, I'm going to leave a space. My absolute value of x plus 4 minus 3. In this equation, it's shaded below the line, so y would be less than. But since the line is solid, I'm going to put or equal to. And again, it has the equation already for you. It's shaded below the equation, so y is going to be less than. And since it's dotted, there's no line, and that would be my answer. Here you're going to have to figure out what the equation is. My b is going to be at -2. Each box is worth 2. So my rise here would be a +2. My run here would be 1, 2, 3, and -3. So my slope is going to be a -2/3. So I'm going to write out my mx plus b. And in this equation, it's shaded above the line, so it's going to be greater than. And since it's a solid line, it's going to be or equal to. Each box is worth 1 here, so my b is going to be at -1 because that's where it crosses my y-axis. And my slope has a rise of 1, 2, 3, a +3, and a run of 1. So 3 over 1, that's the same thing as 3. So it would be mx plus b, and in my equation it's shaded below the line, so y would be less than the equation, or equal to because the line is solid. Here's my absolute value, so first I have to figure out what my vertex is. This is my vertex right here, so that means it's going to be a +1, 0. My slope here, each box is worth 1, would be a rise 1, run of 1, so my slope is just 1. So my equation would look like this. X, remember, for the x value is always opposite. And in this case, it's shaded above, so y is greater than, and since it's dotted, I just leave it as is. You do not have to write that one, but if you want to, you sure can. And that's my answer. So looking at my vertex here is a +5, or 0, with a +5. Slope, rise of 1, run of 1, so that's just 1. So it's going to be the absolute value of x plus 5 on the outside, because this is like your k, and it's shaded below the graph, so y is going to be less than, and since it's dotted, I would leave it just like that, and that would be my answer. This graph is a little bit more tricky just because I'm counting by 2's. So first I find my vertex again. So my vertex would be a positive 1 because half of the box would be worth 1, and I move down 4. So that's my vertex. When I find my slope, remember one box is worth 2, so I have a rise of 2 with a run of 1. My slope is 2 over 1, or just equal to 2. So when I write my equation, I would have a 2 out in front of my absolute value, and x would be at minus 1, because remember it's always opposite on the inside, and on the outside the k would give me the minus 4. Now for the inequality symbol, it's shaded above the graph, so y is greater than, and it's a solid line, so it's or equal to. So same thing here, my vertex would be a positive 3, and I moved up 4. One thing you have to be careful though, this is flipped. So when I look at this equation, my rise would be, from here, be a positive 2, and I move left 1. That would give me the negative 2 for my slope. Okay, you have to make sure to have that negative in front since it's flipped. So I'd have my negative 2 out in front with the absolute value of x minus 3, and then a plus 4 at the end. And it's shaded above the graph, so y is greater than, and since it's dotted, I leave it as is, and that would be my final answer for practice of 2.8. Make sure you show work, and if you don't understand something, ask a question.